Heyo, this is Dash, and today I'm going to be trimming, we're going to be trimming, cooking, and then slicing up for preparation from a Traeger. So join me in what might be a 3-part series. I know it's been a minute, but I've been seeing so many folks out there doing brisket, which is, in my opinion, wrong for those of you guys who are at home or possibly doing catering. So I'm going to come out with an updated, newer, step-by-step video or video series on how to take your brisket from this to this. Alright, please join me as I go ahead and get it done. Get ready. Alright, welcome to the end of my island. This is a 11.9 pound brisket, so just under 12 pound brisket, and I bought this from Walmart. I was at Walmart last night and walked through the little meat section or whatever, and I saw this brisket and I said, alright, I'm going to do a brisket as one does.
Is it just me?
If you're not familiar with the anatomy of the brisket, this is the fat cap of the brisket. This is the top of the brisket, or the outside of the brisket, if you will. This is the bottom of the brisket. You can see this is the flat muscle, and this is what is affectionately called the point. This is the point. These two muscles are separated by this layer of fat. So what I'm going to do is trim the bottom of this brisket. We're going to get some of this off. The key to trimming brisket is to leave it alone. Less is more. This big old piece of fat right here, I'm going to trim this off. Every brisket is going to be different. So when you have a brisket, and sometimes you'll see this big old piece of fat, other times it won't be there. Same thing with this, the decal, the big old piece of decal right here. There are times when this decal is less apparent than others. But I'm going to show you how I trim a brisket for when I do my catered events, or for just, I won't say random sales, but for selling brisket, how I sell my brisket. So first thing, I always start with the underside of the brisket, and the elephant in the room is this big old piece of fat right here. A lot of times you'll see people come straight across this right there. That's not good enough, because you're leaving that piece of fat in there. When you leave that piece of fat in there, what this does is it slows down the cook. So I'll come off to the side, come in aggressively, and you can see where the fat line is and where the line is for the point. I'm going to come in where I can see it, cut it completely out. Go in, insert my knife to cut this piece of fat completely out and away from the brisket. See, I'm going in at about a 45-degree angle. We can pull in here, and I can come across and cut this completely out. The more fat like this that will not render that you take out, the faster your brisket will cook. If you are cutting and you don't have a sharp knife, or you're not very experienced, please be careful with the direction in which the knife is going. Now, I'm going to take this brisket and we're going to pull up on some of this fat here, and we're going to trim some of this off. The good thing is, if you are cooking for just simply catering, or like for yourself in your backyard, you do not have to make this perfect, and you do not have to take every little bit of this fat that's on the bottom and every little bit of this silver skin that's off. But anything that I can pick up and pull, I'm going to cut off. You can, if you so choose, spend hours trimming a brisket. That is not what I'm going for. For me, I trim the big, huge pieces off of the brisket and keep it moving. Because the longer I spend trimming a brisket, the less money I make. Now, here's a trick that My friend Alton from the Dogfathers barbecue channel showed pick your brisket up from underneath, give it a hump, and you can take your knife and push it away from you and get some of those big old egregious pieces that do not pop up. So thanks, Alton. All right, that is it. This is how I'm going to leave this brisket. I could trim it to be much better than that, but I'm telling you, it's not going to make much difference. This fat here, if you so choose, you can take this fat and put it into a container, a small container that you're going to put on your smoker, and you can render this fat down. Today, I'm tossing it. So you see I have aluminum foil down here, and I didn't talk about it. I do rinse my briskets off before I get started, and I put this aluminum foil down. Heavy recommendation is to get yourself a big box of heavy duty aluminum foil from Sam's or Costco or Restaurant Depot, just like this one. So now I'm to the point where I am trying to make sure that you guys can see what I'm doing, as well as getting this brisket trimmed up. This piece of fat right here is also not going to render at all, so I'm going to cut the majority of it off. Now, there are times when I will come in between the two muscles. This again is the flat, and this is the point. You can clearly see in here, there's a line of fat that runs, and you can separate that. And if it's a huge piece of fat, like sometimes the brisket will be a little off cut, and this piece of fat will be underneath the point, or between the point and the flat, and you can come in and cut that piece out. But because it's sitting off to the side today, I'm going to go ahead and just simply cut this, a good majority of this out and away. Again, this will help your brisket cook faster. Good sharp knife, slow, intentional movements. Cut a good majority of this fat out and away, and it will speed up the cook process or the cook time for your brisket immensely. Plus, you'll get more flavor if you season the actual meat and not the fat. There is a little bit more fat down in here. I could take the time and come in here and chase this all away, but because this is so little fat in here, I'm going to leave it be. Again, trimming this off, and I'm not rendering that today, so we're just going to chuck it. This is the bottom side of the brisket completed. Your brisket will look differently than this one. I won't say your mileage may vary, it will look differently. This little piece of fat is no value add. We're going to just cut that off. And I'm not cutting to the point where I am so deep into the meat where I'm cutting off pounds and pounds of meat. It's like shavings. It's just to the point where I'm hitting the muscle and not the fat. There's another little piece right there. We'll take that off. And this is to the point where I want to say you'll probably be starting to second guess yourself. But leave it be. Leave it be. Leave it be. Especially if you are cooking for yourself or for some catering. Now, if you're doing a competition, that's different. You might want to come and trim this whole thing off to square up this brisket. And I've seen a lot of people that want to say, oh, you need to make the brisket aerodynamic by cutting this way. That has never needed to be the case for backyard cooking. If you are cooking for backyard, all you need to do is trim this fat down a little bit. And I trim my briskets a lot more aggressively than most. The good thing with this particular brisket, because it's such a small brisket, there's not very much fat on top of this brisket, which is a fantastic thing, because the more fat you have on top of this brisket, the more time it's going to take for it to cook. I'm actually going to just come across. Now, because this is the way that this fat is, I'm going to come and get this started so I can pick it up, grab a hold of it, and I'm putting my knife down again at a 45-degree angle, and I'm just slicing while I'm pulling. And it's just to take this corner off of this piece of fat to get it a little bit thinner And if this were a much bigger brisket, this fat cap would be a lot bigger. But because it is not, this is all we have to work with today, and that's fine. That is it. This brisket does not have very much fat on the top. I'm going to leave it be. All right, there you have it. That is it. It should not take you longer than, let's say, 10 minutes, absolute max, to trim your brisket once you get good at it. I trimmed this brisket relatively, or in relative real time, just so that I could show you how I was getting it done. Again, this brisket is on the very small end of the scale. Because it's on the smaller end of the scale, it did not need nearly as much trimming as a lot of other briskets can and possibly would. When you get to this point, I've seen a lot of folks trim an entire brisket around and make it smaller, or put it into, or have it to be a smaller package. Because of the fact that I'm not making sausage, I do not trim the outside of my brisket. There are a lot of folks out there that do make sausage with their brisket trimmings. I'm not one of them. You could make your, sausage or hamburger or whatever the case may be. That's not what I'm doing with this. So I leave my brisket relatively whole so that I can make the most amount of money that I can on selling this brisket when I cook it. Now, if you so choose, or if you could, do me a favor, hit that like button if you like what you saw today. If you learned something, please let me know down below. I'll see you in the next video where I get this brisket out on the smoker, and I'm gonna cook it on a Traeger. All right, see y'all next time. All right, so I can't make this up news. Do you see the problem there?
More butter, baby.